The conflict between the hot-headed teen hero Firestorm and the unstable mistress of bitter cold, Killer Frost, begins to heat up as she hatches a scheme to turn the 5 boroughs of New York into her own ice-covered kingdom and crown herself Queen of the Big Apple. Greetings, and here is yet another episode of the DC Comics Silver and Bronze Age podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Larry, aka the Charming Curmudgeon, and I'll be your intrepid guide as I feature back issues from DC Comics past, and together we'll thrill to the adventures of your favorite DC Comics superheroes. Before we start with the episode at hand, I hope everyone had a peaceful and thoughtful Good Friday and an enjoyable Easter, and that you celebrated both days in the loving company of friends and family. So with those heartfelt good wishes, let's get the episode underway, shall we? Featured today on the broadcast is The Fury of Firestorm number 3 from August of 1982. The writing for this story was by Jerry Conway, pencil art by Pat Broderick, inking by Roden Rodriguez, lettering by Todd Klein, coloring by Gene D'Angelo, and the editor for this comic was Len Wein. The title for the story is called A Cold Time in the Old Town Tonight. The narrative for the story starts off with 2 muggers getting roughly kicked out of a bar, the same 2 thugs who in the previous issue had brutally beat to death the great-grandfather of Firestorm's recent adversary, Black Bison. At the same moment, Firestorm is nearby on the trail of the thugs in question, bent on capturing them for the police, but not without exacting some brutal revenge of his own. The hot-headed teenage hero chases down and easily subdues the 2 scared street punks, and waits for the police to arrest them. Still feeling frustrated and anguished over recent events, Firestorm flies off to sort out his troubled thoughts. Martin Stein tells Ronnie that he should attend Bison Black's Midnight's funeral, which they both attend separately the next morning. Meanwhile, at downtown Manhattan's Federal District Courthouse, Killer Frost's trial begins in earnest. The presiding female judge insists on deactivating the Thermofrost freezer unit holding the Ice Maiden at bay, so that the captured prisoner could demonstrate if she indeed has superpowers. Killer Frost uses the moment to escape, in the process freezing everyone in the courthouse. The Ice Maiden then flies to the Bronx water reservoir to put her insane plans into action, freezing the entire water supply of the city, using the powerful and dangerous upsurge of pressurized frozen water to plunge New York and its citizens into a frozen, suspended animation, while she declares herself queen, even going so far as to construct an icy throne for herself atop the roof of City Hall. A little later, Ronnie Raymond, brooding over an upsetting incident earlier in the day involving his father, is snapped out of his momentary funk by Professor Stein, alerting Ronnie to the fact New York has been suddenly turned into a gigantic ice chest. Both Ronnie and Professor Stein realize Killer Frost is once more on the loose and set out to prevent her latest scheme. Flying over City Hall, Firestorm encounters the depraved Ice Maiden sitting on her throne, and soon compels him to acknowledge her as New York's queen, and to bow down to her. Now, so much for the events of the issue at hand. Now, just a quick follow-up for information's sake about what happened in the next issue. As one would expect, Killer Frost is eventually defeated by our hero, with the helpful intervention from fellow members of the Justice League of America. And with help from JLA member Red Tornado, Firestorm restores New York to normal. You know, folks, it's my humble opinion that Firestorm is one of the most dynamic, most thrilling superheroes coming out of DC Comics' Bronze Age, and he certainly earned his place amongst the membership of the Justice League of America. But you might be asking, who created Firestorm? What's he all about? Well, okay, folks, let's find out. Created by prolific comic book writer Jerry Conway and artist Al Milgrom, in Firestorm, The Nuclear Man #1 from March of 1978, the first Firestorm series didn't really make much of an impact. In fact, the series was cancelled just after 6 issues. Firestorm was then relegated to a backup feature in the Flash comic book for a time before getting his own title once again in 1982. As far as the art duties for the series The Fury of Firestorm was concerned, what else could be said? Wow. The artwork by Pat Broderick with inking assists by Roden Rodriguez makes each issue a visual treat. Broderick's art style gives each adventure an expressive, detailed look and feel, and the appearance of Firestorm himself and the dangers he faces puts an extra layer of enjoyment into the stories. You cannot ignore the way Firestorm just explodes into action, like a fireball into the skies, launching himself into yet another dangerous battle against evil. Unfortunately, Broderick's art duties did not last long on the series. The artwork was passed on to Raphael Kayanen, who made a lengthy run on the title until issue number 46, before Joe Brzezowski took over the penciling. For a moment, we'll get into a brief thumbnail sketch of Firestorm himself. Through a nuclear accident, high school student and basketball player Ronnie Raymond and Nobel Prize winner Professor Martin Stein are integrated into a single being, becoming the heroic figure known as Firestorm. Ronnie is in command of the athletic physical form, while Martin Stein is the voice of reason in Ronnie's mind, giving advice to the teenager on how to use his amazing powers effectively to combat evil. Besides possessing various powers such as superior strength, endurance, speed, and the power of flight, Firestorm's main fantastic ability is his capacity to transmute matter, which has helped him on so many occasions. Now, it's become abundantly clear that Jerry Conway's work for DC's rival comic book publisher on a certain wall-crawling, web-spinning superhero had key influences on his writing of Firestorm. I mean, look at the aspects of the narrative offered by Conway from the very beginning of his work on the title, and you'll see what I mean. We have a teenage hero with incredible powers and abilities fighting evil in New York, spouting off witty banter to villains, and dealing with the angst of being a student in high school. Conway even goes so far as to give our hero an alliterative name, for goodness sake. Can it be even any more obvious? Well, I suppose one could make those comparisons, but other aspects make key differences which make Ronnie Raymond, Martin Stein, and the supporting cast unique in the DC universe. Ronnie Raymond, although a popular high school basketball player, deals with constant insults and humiliation from a brilliant but mouthy honor student named Cliff Carmichael. Ronnie also copes with living with a single parent, a busy newspaper reporter whom Ronnie rarely sees, whose pressures and workload from his job sometimes causes conflict with his son. He also has a romantic relationship with a fellow student named Doreen Day, which is not always smooth sailing. At least it could be said Ronnie could take some solace from his turbulent social life outside of his secret identity, in the rather unique relationship with the man who he shares the Firestorm persona, Martin Stein. As far as the professor of physics is concerned, his life was fraught with personal problems before it was turned upside down on that fateful day the nuclear accident took place. Initially, due to the fact he was unconscious during the initial transformation and integration, Stein cannot control the Firestorm figure himself, being relegated to the position of backseat driver to Ronnie taking control. Stein was concerned about his frequent disappearances and blackouts, not knowing what happened, but eventually Ronnie Raymond convinced him of the truth of their shared experiences, which in turn strengthened their bond as friends outside of dangerous superheroics. As for the villainess in the story, Killer Frost herself, she made her debut in Firestorm number 3 from June of 1978. Crystal Frost was a student at Hudson University, studying to become a scientist, while falling in love with her professor, who happened to be Martin Stein himself at the time they met. Stein was not interested in pursuing a relationship with the shy young student, but wanted to get her out of her shell, to which Crystal Frost misinterpreted that as being an interest in her. After graduating, due to other failed attempts at attracting men who were not interested in her, Frost soon grew resentful and angry toward all men in general, her hatred bordering on the sociopathic. Frost acquired her fearsome frosty powers by accidentally locking herself inside a thermofrost chamber, and somehow surviving the horrific experience, had been turned into Killer Frost, a being who needs the heat from people in order to produce intense cold and ice. Killer Frost was involved in several intense clashes with Firestorm before she ultimately died from an attempt to absorb too much of Firestorm's heat and energy from his body. However, that was not the end of Killer Frost herself. Several other women had also adopted that particular identity and had went up against Firestorm in subsequent issues much later on. Before we head toward the end of this episode, I want to highlight some notable events which happened during August of 1982, so let's take a look at the rundown. August 1st, heavy Israeli air bombardment on Beirut, Lebanon. And also on August the 1st, after the first 13 runnings of the Midsummer Classic, Darrell Waltrip becomes the first driver to win the Talladega 500 twice. August the 5th, U.S. performs nuclear test on Nevada test site. August the 11th, the South African Defense Force, the SADF, raids southern Angola. August the 17th, first compact discs CDs released to the public in Germany. August the 18th, longest baseball game at Wrigley Field in Chicago, Illinois ends after 22 innings before the LA Dodgers beat the Chicago Cubs 2-1. The game started on August the 17th. August the 19th, Soyuz T-7 is launched, sending Svetlana Savtskaya into orbit, and she is the second woman, Soviet woman, in space. August the 20th, Lebanese Civil War. A multinational force lands in Beirut to oversee the PLO withdrawal from Lebanon. French troops arrive on August the 21st, U.S. Marines August the 25th. And also on August the 20th, school teacher Carl Robert Brown murders 8 people inside a welding shop in Miami, Florida, before being shot dead by a passing motorist. August the 22nd, Israeli General Ariel Sharon urges Palestinians to discuss peaceful coexistence. August the 26th, NASA launches Telsat-F. And August the 27th, Soyuz T-7 returns to Earth. August 28th, USSR performs underground nuclear test. On the entertainment front, the 3 top-grossing films of 1982 are as follows. In third place, we have An Officer and a Gentleman, grossing $129,795,554. In second place, we have Tootsie, with the earnings of $177,200,000. And in the first place winner, a big winner, and this is certainly no surprise considering this sci-fi movie made it to the top-grossing film of 1982. It is none other than E.T. the Extraterrestrial, with a total gross of $359,197,037. Is it any wonder E.T. is considered an all-time 1980s sci-fi classic? Other notable films released for distribution in theaters in 1982 were as follows. Gandhi, First Blood, the first Rambo film, The Dark Crystal, Conan the Barbarian, Rocky III, Blade Runner, The Road Warrior, The Thing from 1982, Death Wish 2, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, The Beastmaster, Diner, Night Crossing, Creepshow, Porky's, and finally, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Now, also, some television-related events occurring in that year. January the 1st, cable news network CNN initiates an associated channel dubbed CNN2 that features a round-the-clock news wheel format. The channel would be renamed CNN Headline News a year later and is now known as HLN. January the 10th, CBS televises the NFC Championship game between the San Francisco 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys. In what would become one of the most iconic images in NFL history, San Francisco tight end Dwight Clark makes the catch to enable the 49ers to defeat the Cowboys 28-27 and go to their first ever Super Bowl. February the 7th, as part of a two-night special event, ABC airs the network television broadcast premiere of Superman, the movie. March the 4th, the crime drama spoof Police Squad premieres on ABC. Though it only lasts 6 episodes, the last being broadcast on July the 8th, the comedy would serve as the origin of the Frank Drebin character and the inspiration for the Naked Gun movie series. July 13th, ABC broadcasts the Major League Baseball All-Star Game from Olympic Stadium in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. It's the first time that the Midsummer Classic is played outside of the United States. July the 29th, professional wrestler Jerry Lawler slaps actor and comedian Andy Kaufman in the face on the program Late Night with David Letterman. Kaufman responds by throwing coffee and shouting profanities at Lawler. The incident was later revealed to have been staged. September the 6th, after Tom Wopat and John Snyder quit the CBS action series The Dukes of Hazzard as a result of a contract dispute, their characters Bo and Luke Duke were written out of the series as joining a NASCAR team and are replaced by cousins Coy and Vance, played respectively by Byron Cherry and Christopher Mayer. Bo and Luke and Wopat and Schneider would return to the series by the season's end. October the 22nd, Susan Stafford departs as co-host of the NBC game show Wheel of Fortune to do humanitarian work. Auditions occur for who will replace her, with Vanna White formally replacing Stafford on December the 13th. White continues on with Wheel of Fortune to this very day. November the 20th, at the age of 7, Drew Barrymore becomes the youngest person to ever guest host Saturday Night Live. It was in this same episode that Andy Kaufman was banned from ever performing on the show again. December the 27th, surround sound is introduced for home use by Dolby. Now, in popular music in August of 1982, the biggest chart single, according to Billboard magazine at the time, holding the number 1 spot for an astounding 4 consecutive weeks, was the band Survivor's hit tune, Eye of the Tiger, which was featured in one of the Rocky films, I believe. Other notable popular singles during 1982 were as follows: Physical by Olivia Newton-John, Centerfold by the Jay Giles Band, I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, Ebony and Ivory by Paul McCartney and Stevie Wonder, Don't You Want Me by the Human League, Who Can It Be Now by Men at Work, and finally, Man Eater by Daryl Hall and John Oates. Well, I guess that's everything for this episode, and I guess we've come to the end of it. Before I say goodbye, I'd like to thank everybody who listened to this, and I invite you to stick around with me as I continue this podcast. If you would be so kind, please like and subscribe to this channel for more episodes, and if you have any comments or suggestions, please feel free to post them in the comments section below. It would be greatly appreciated. So until next time, everybody, this is Larry, aka the Charming Curmudgeon. So long for now.